Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions with DrShiny. This is a monthly tarot reading for Gemini for the month of May. So welcome Gemini, and let's go ahead and get started on your reading. Okay, so I have the High Priestess, the Tower, Seven of Cups, Hanged Man. I'll have to move these down just a little bit here. Okay. The Empress, the Nine of Swords, Ace of Cups, Ace of Swords, Six of Wands, and the Eight of Wands. Okay, so for your current situation, you have the High Priestess crossed by the Tower. Okay, so the High Priestess is showing you some possibly icky sides of life, some things that are a little bit more mysterious or unknown. There's not as much comfort always in her, but she's also the archetype of the divine feminine and of the intuition, right? So she really is open to the universe and doesn't her first instinct is not to label things, but she kind of knows and feels intuitively rather than with mental conceptualization and that type of thing. So in a way, it's like, yes, you're opening yourself up to a little bit more of the bad alongside the good, but in a way that you don't necessarily feel it as bad, but you're recognizing things simply for the way they are, which oftentimes frees you up to kind of see things a slightly different way. Instead of just seeing it as a good thing or a bad thing, you see it as where do the possibilities change or where does this lead, right? So this is a situation that you've been going through where you're becoming a little bit more open and receptive to the universe and to what's going on. And what's crossing you or influencing you is this tower, which can mean that there have been, you may have put your faith in certain institutions. Maybe you were extremely scientific or something like that, but you kind of recognize there's a limit to how that kind of thing can serve you. And so you're kind of abandoning certain aspects of your life. And I'm not talking just only about science. Is this is about institutions in general, or things that are like man-made or society-made, which are not necessarily a completely animal or natural aspect of life, but it's something that we do as a part of a sort of social invention. And you're kind of you've been maybe burned by that, or you've recognized that they're fallible or impermanent or not perfect. And so you are becoming more open to just seeing things the way that they are instead of trying to control things, instead of trying to put up a fence or a wall and keep the dirty, nasty things out. You're becoming a little bit more down with the way the world is. Okay, so what you're moving away from is the Seven of Cups. And it's in the reverse. So Seven of Cups normally represents like having a bunch of people trying to win you over, or there's like a choice to be made, but you're not really, none of those choices are in your best interest. You're really better off to just sit by and wait for something better to present itself. And you're moving away, well, so it's in the reverse, meaning that you have been a little bit more resistant to make a choice, or that you didn't want to make a choice. So now you're a little bit you're coming around on that, and you're feeling as though it's okay for you to make a choice. It's okay for you to be imperfect. It's okay for you to move forward, right? But on the other hand, you're also recognizing, in this High Priestess here, that there is a power in just accepting the world the way that it is. And so that's making you less inclined to want to make a choice. But what you're moving toward is the Hanged Man here. And the Hanged Man is somebody who characteristically doesn't make a choice. They sort of waste some time, but intentionally. It's meditation very much so. And the Hanged Man is kind of fun because it's like when you have something, some imperative that you're really, really wanting to get something done, or in some sort of a way put effort into some goal, and then you kind of just spontaneously make the decision not to do that or to just chill. Sometimes a new option sort of presents itself just from you doing that. Or problems tend to solve themselves if you don't do anything to address them, almost miraculously. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good way to live life just in general, but it has its merits, right? So you're moving toward this energy of kind of like letting things go a little bit, going with the flow. But your foundation here is the Empress, and this card represents what's going on in the subconscious, or the frame of reference for this whole reading, or also what the universe is kind of trying to teach you, the core lesson here. And the core lesson is the Empress, which is all about nurturing and like a feminine archetype. So this is a really good mother. There's pregnancy related here. But what's going on is you're cultivating this stability. You're cultivating the ability for things to go on and for you to have a distance from all the events that are going on in the world that allows you to exude this stable nature, which attracts others to you, which very much makes you someone who is sought after for advice and things like that. Because in a chaotic, crazy world, nobody's asking the people for help that are losing their minds and are running all over the place like chickens with their head cut off. The people that you go to for advice are the ones that seem unfazed, the ones that seem okay in the midst of the storm, right? So this is a quality that you're being taught, that you're having to learn for some purpose in your life. And it may be to become a caretaker of a child, or, adopting or something like that. But in any case, there's going to be people that rely on you for this type of a nurturing attitude. And that also works itself into your own hopes and dreams, right? Because to be able to be successful in any sort of a long-term project, you have to be able to master this sort of nurturing attitude. You can't just force it every step of the way. Sometimes you have to just provide all of the recipe, the ingredients for the thing to be done, and then let it kind of become itself, or grow on its own, like a plant. In one of my other readings, I was talking about how you don't grow a plant, you just give the plant everything that it needs to grow, and it grows on its own. So this is kind of what you're being taught. You're being taught not to be too choosy or too prone to, feeling like you have control over everything in the situation, and to just allow things to be what they are, and to be in touch more with the feeling of things. So it's not necessarily about, like, if you have a child, it's not necessarily about controlling everything that child is doing, but it's about feeling, what kind of person is this child becoming? What do they need more of? What do they need less of? And it's not so much a case-by-case thing, but it's about looking at the overall health of the child. Just because they go around reciting Peppa Pig or something all the time doesn't mean that there's a problem with their personality, right? But if they're being mean to other kids, then there may be something that needs to change in their life, right? So that's what it's about with nurturing. It's not about being too nitpicky or detailed in your control of the situation, but it's about being a little bit more receptive to the small things that are going on. The other way to think about it is you're walking a dog down the beach, and you're going to be going in a relatively stable, steady, straight line. But the dog is going to have a tendency to sort of wander around the beach, right? And he can wander anywhere around as long as he's within a certain radius around you, which is the leash. Now, some people, like if you're at a dog show, You want that dog to remain exactly by your side and not walk in front of you or behind you, but stay exactly in the same position that you are. And, it depends on the breed, right? But most dogs would rather just kind of wander around and explore, and they're going to have a little bit of a happier life if they're able to do that. But, some dog breeds love to be trained and love to work, the working class, right? So it does depend on the individual a little bit, but that's what comes with this nurturing and open mentality is recognizing what is it that my child needs, and recognizing that there's not necessarily like one specific way for this to go. Now, I've been relating this to a child. This is going to apply to everybody in terms of raising a child. This is for some people going to be a project, or just more in general the way that you live your life. Instead of trying to organize every single thing about how your life is going, sometimes it's about just putting all of the ingredients there for it to be a good life, right? You've got a good amount of money. You've got a good amount of effort that you spend on vacations and things like that. So sometimes it's about just sort of intuitively walking your way through life, instead of saying, I have to be here in 10 years, I have to be here in 5 years, and I'm not going to be happy unless I'm driving this car, right? So you can be a little bit too clingy to the details of a situation. So again, it's a really good metaphor for raising a child here. Not everybody, it's not going to apply to everybody in that way. But in one way or another, you're learning to be a little bit more hands-off with the situation, right? Now, in your conscious mind, you have the Nine of Swords, but it's in the reverse. So the Nine of Swords is typically anxiety. I mean, just straight up anxiety. There's too much thought going on. You're too worried. You're worried about being worried. And one of the ways that this sort of it differs from just fear. There's a difference in fear and anxiety, right? And the primary difference is that fear has like an object. If you're afraid because a lion is behind you and he's about to eat you, that's a very good fear, right? There's a reason to fear that. But if you are, let's say you're afraid that you might be afraid if you saw a lion, now there's no real object of your fear. There is a thought in your head that is plaguing you, and that's what really differentiates anxiety from fear, is that fear is a healthy, almost like a reflex, a reaction to something that is real. And anxiety is about situations that have not come to pass, that you're afraid might come to pass. There's something that you're trying to kind of control the situation. Now, this is in the reverse, so you're resistant to that. You get that idea, and that's what's facilitating this change. This kind of gravitating more toward the high priestess type of energy. It's once you figure that out, this is a big lesson in the realm of thought, right? It's the 9. It's right before the 10, which is kind of like figuring out thought in general. So you're getting there. You're really getting there. And once you've figured out that you cannot let anxiety harm you, worrying can be productive to a point, but then it gets overboard, and then you're just really hurting yourself in the long run and preventing yourself from experiencing certain things. So once you figure that out, then it's just really a short trip to getting to the point where you're opening up to your subconscious and to your intuition and feeling your way through life a little bit better. Okay, so your advice for the current situation is this Ace of Cups. And what this is saying is open yourself to feeling new things, right? So sometimes we stray away from feeling unpleasant things like heartbreak or anger or, these types of things. We avoid them. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Anger Management, but in that movie, the main character, Adam Sandler, he was very opposed to feeling angry. He just didn't want to let it out. He wanted to bottle everything up and take it. And people just started walking all over him. And it got to the point where he was kind of dangerous because he was about to explode. And so a therapist tried to help him through that by systematically figuring out ways for him to make him angry, to provide him with an opportunity to let out his anger and to recognize that anger, even though we perceive it as a negative emotion, it has its place, and it is a positive when utilized correctly. Same with fear, right? It's a positive when it's utilized correctly. It's when there's a imbalance or a suppression or these type of things, that it becomes a negative rather than a positive. So this is asking you to open yourself up to new emotions or emotions that are somewhat foreign to you, that you haven't been indulging in as much in the past, and figure out a way to turn these things into a positive or to find a healthy balance. So the objective is to not reject any particular type of emotion, but to find out how do you integrate and incorporate that emotion into your life in a way that you would say is healthy. So if your only way of feeling emotionally well is that nobody that you love ever passes away or dies, then I got some bad news for you. Because it's going to happen, right? It's inevitable, especially, as you get older, unless, you die first. But if you're hoping that you die before everybody else that you care about dies, that's another kind of imbalance that needs some attention, right? But feeling the sting of loss is never pleasant, but it is something that is quite frankly a beautiful part of life that makes the time that you do have with people more precious, right? So without being able to accept to some degree, um, that reality, and that's a good example. And again, these are general readings, so this isn't going to apply to everybody in the same way. So I use specific examples, but I'm talking about energies, not necessarily the example isn't necessarily going to apply to you individually. So talking about the emotion of losing a loved one, if you are in a place where you just cannot fathom or you can't think about losing a loved one, then you're inclined to take the time that you have with your loved ones for granted. You're inclined to sort of more just forget about it and to assume that they're always going to be there. And then that's where you end up in a situation where you, when they do finally pass away, you're full of regrets and you wish you'd spent more time with them and that kind of thing. So in a way, accepting that emotion to a smaller degree prevents you from feeling it to a much greater degree later on in your life, right? And that's just one example. But whatever the emotions are that you have been sort of like rejecting or not allowing into your life, it's time for you to sort of find a way to make friends with them. Okay, so environment, you have this Ace of Swords in the reverse. Ace of Swords is about new thoughts, and in the reverse, what this means is that your environment around you is not very receptive to new ideas and new thoughts. And that may be relevant in this situation, but it may just be a sort of like piece of outside information that, along with what's going on in you here, there's also a little bit of a rejection for new ways of thinking or new ideas. And it could also be that people are unreceptive to the change in your personality that's been occurring, or your growth, right? Just your growth in general. There was a really good quote I saw the other day. Some people will never accept that you've grown past a version of you that they were able to control. So they'll always see you in that past version of yourself that they were able to have power over. So that might be relevant in this situation as you consider your personal growth. Your fears card, you have this Six of Wands in the reverse. Six of Wands is all about being victorious. She's sitting here holding her hands up in a V, representing victory. And in the upright position, what this means is that you're afraid of not accomplishing anything. You're afraid of not getting anything done. And that can be what drove the prior version of you that was a little bit possibly more choosy and controlling and trying to get things to be a certain way. But what you have to recognize is that those controlling tendencies are actually what prevent people from getting anything done, because you're closed off to a lot of possibilities. And if you're open to possibilities and you're flexible and you're willing to try new things, sometimes you're really amazed what you are able to accomplish just by saying, okay, I'll give that a try, right? So try more things and you'll find more success. If you try less things, you're less likely to succeed. I mean, it's that simple. And, sometimes, I don't know, we talk ourselves out of that kind of thinking and think that we have to focus on something very specific, but you don't. Just give it a little bit of a loose grip and just say, as long as you know that you want to accomplish some things, some opportunities are going to present themselves, and knock it out of the park, just whatever you do, crush it. What you have for your overall message is this Eight of Wands in the reverse. And this kind of represents a summary of what's going on with you, or the long-term outcome, that kind of thing. And the Eight of Wands in the upright position represents a sort of something happening, something spontaneous. It looks like there's 8 wands here that are crashing toward the ground or something like that. You don't really know what's going on. It's kind of a mystery action, very, very sudden type thing going on. Now, in the reverse, it could be that you're a little resistant to shaking things up too much, but it also can mean that there's like a waiting, or something hasn't really happened yet, but you're waiting on something to happen. You're being open to the sort of spontaneous mystery of what might come next. So that's a good place to be, but it also could be a little bit of resistance to making new things happen. So that can be a little bit of a hardship for you in this situation, but I think that it's probably going to work out in a more of a positive way, because there's some good signals that you're growing in a more matured type of direction, and that you're going to be very open to kind of rolling with the way the world is, or rolling with reality as it presents itself. So I'm pretty confident that there's a brighter side to that for you, and that it's kind of funny how if you feel like you've been out of control a little bit, or things have been chaotic, becoming open to that chaos, becoming open to the tumultuous points of life, has a way of making them become calm. It's like when you are ready for things to be exciting and crazy, then all of a sudden they get calm. So, and I think that will usher in a sort of a new phase in your spiritual and emotional development. But for now, this is the phase that you're in. And so go with it and enjoy it, because it's a pretty cool place to be when you're opening up to your intuition. All kinds of things change in your life. Okay, so that's about it for your monthly reading. And thank you again for watching. Please leave me some comments. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like. And also subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And I'll see you guys next month. Thank you.